Welcome to the Ringer NFL show. I'm your host, Sheil Kapadia. Today, we are looking at who has the most at stake over the next 6 weeks. It's really when narratives are shaped in the regular season. What happens between now and the playoffs? This can go a long way in determining what happens in the offseason and beyond. So we're going to talk about some of those guys with a lot at stake. Our guest is Austin Gayle from The Ringer. I've asked him to come up with 3 people. So we'll see who he chooses. We'll see if I agree, if I disagree, and then we'll talk about it. Let's take a break. We come back and we talk to Austin Gayle. This is the Ringer NFL show presented by FanDuel, the best place to bet the NFL all season long. FanDuel's got it all. Same game parlays, quick bets for jumping in live, and your way so you can build the bet that fits your play. And Missouri, get excited because FanDuel's coming your way December 1st. Download the FanDuel.com/Ringer NFL to get started. Must be 21 plus and present in select states and 18 plus in DC, Kentucky, and Wyoming. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit rg-help.com. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. All right, we are back on the Ringer NFL show with Austin Gayle. Austin, your task today. Who are the 3 people in the NFL with the most at stake the rest of the way, the next 6 weeks? Let's get started. Who do you got? Who's number 1?
Is it crazy for me to start with Pittsburgh Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin? And when you first asked me this question, I think the only way to approach it is to look at their next 6 games, like look at their final 6 games and see what they have. The Steelers, who are 6-5, who've completely fallen off after starting the season hot and I think they're 2-2 over their last few games. It looks like the Baltimore Ravens, who are now 6-5 after starting the season 1-5, are probably going to win the AFC North. The Steelers' remaining games are Bills, at Ravens, Dolphins, at Lions, at Browns, and then Ravens again. They need 3 wins for Mike Tomlin to maintain his I've never had a losing season. And you got the Bills coming off a tough loss with extended rest on Thursday Night Football against the Texans. You have the Ravens twice, who need both those games to win the division. Dolphins, let's just give them that win. But then you have at Lions, at Browns. Well, Browns, maybe you give them that win, but you need one more win. You need one more win. Who are they beating the Bills? Are they splitting games with the Ravens, or do they beat the Lions in Detroit? I don't know. I think this Steelers team is underperforming, and I think we kind of felt that. I think we talked earlier in the season about this offense feels gimmicky. This defense is easily the worst they've had in the Tomlin era. It's hard to find 3 wins remaining on the schedule, which would mean the first year Aaron Rodgers is a Pittsburgh Steeler ends up being the first year Mike Tomlin has a losing record in the NFL. Would be quite the way to end the season, especially after starting the season, obviously with a winning record and winning games early on.
Which I have a streak, Austin, of predicting every year is going to be the year that Mike Tomlin loses that streak. And I did predict it again this year. So I'm not jinxing anything. Let's see if it happens. But when we talk about what's at stake, so is this just a streak of never having had a losing record that's at stake? Or do you think there's more to this? Because if the scenario you painted actually plays out, and let's say they finish 8-9, maybe it even goes worse, and they're 7-10, and they have a losing record, and they don't make the playoffs, are we finally at the point where we say, you know what, it's time. It's just time for a natural break. What's your plan? You're going to run it back with 43-year-old Aaron Rodgers next season? Or are you just like, no, the streak is what's at stake, but let's be honest, Tomlin's not going anywhere?
I think the streak is obviously at stake, and that's a big part of it. And I think talking to Steelers fans, even editor-in-chief here at The Ringer, Ben Glicksman, it's hard to put my head in their headspace of like, they're really frustrated with Mike Tomlin because they haven't won a playoff game since 2018 or
16, I think.
2016. They haven't won a playoff game since 2016. Earlier.
The other teams in that group, by the way, Austin, who haven't won a playoff game since 2016: Bears, Panthers, Cardinals, Raiders, Dolphins, and Broncos. That's it. So it's not now. They've made the playoffs more, but that's not a good group to be with right now.
So I do think Steelers fans are frustrated with Mike Tomlin. And then if this season ends up being the season where the streak ends, it also ends where Mason Rudolph has to get extended playing time, where he was the backup in Pittsburgh for a long time, then went to Tennessee, and then they brought him back. Like the Steelers bring him back thinking he's this capable backup that can come in a pinch, and they continue to lose games with him. They haven't had a top 10 offense by success rate since 2018, since like the latter years of the Ben Roethlisberger era. Tomlin has not been able to figure out the quarterback position since Roethlisberger left. Now, what was supposed to be the strength for Tomlin all this time, the defense, is easily the worst defense of the Tomlin era. And when you look by most metrics, it's the worst defense this millennium by success rate, by EPA per drive allowed, by points per drive allowed. Like the defense is bottomed out. They still don't have an answer at the quarterback position. They could have this losing record, this losing streak, and they're probably not going to have another playoff win. I think that the frustration with Mike Tomlin, he hits at least its highest boiling point that it's had in the entire time that he's been there. Will that lean? They let go of him this offseason. I don't know. The head coaching cycle this offseason looks pretty rough. I don't think there are going to be better options than Tomlin this offseason, but it will get to as close as I think Steelers fans have been to being like, you know what? It's time. It's time to move on from Mike Tomlin. We need a new era. We need to start fresh.
Okay, but what you just said makes it interesting, makes him an interesting candidate because, everyone at the Ringer loves a good head coach trade, Austin. And we need to be the company that starts making these happen around the NFL. Because, you look at the candidates and you're like, wait, these guys are up for head coaching jobs? Oh my gosh, I'm glad my team doesn't need a head coach this offseason. And so it feels to me like this isn't going to be a Steelers thing. They're not going to say, all right, we're done with him. He's underachieving. That's not how they operate. They know he's a very good head coach. They know he sets a floor. They know he's a good face of the franchise, all those things. However, if you're Mike Tomlin, and I was listening to our friends on the press box, and they had Chris Collinsworth on. I don't know if you heard that or not. And they asked him, Austin, who they said, who's a guy who you meet in production meetings who you're just like, this guy would crush it on TV? And his answer was Mike Tomlin. And I just do wonder, at some point, does Mike Tomlin say, this has been a great run. Either I need a mid-career break here. Let me go do some TV for a couple of years, though, like Bill Cowher. Now, Bill Cowher never came back, but then, I'll come back in a couple of years. I'm only 53 years old. I got time. I'll wait for the right job. Or do you have a team like, say, the New York Giants that's looking for a coach this offseason and looks at the candidate pool and says, that is not that enticing. And we've struck out on all these guys over the years since Tom Coughlin. We need a sure thing, just someone who brings some stability, some respectability to the franchise. Let's at least call the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's talk to Mike Tomlin's agent and let's see if there's something that can be worked out there where we send some draft capital that way. Or do any of those scenarios intrigue you with Mike Tomlin in 2026?
Possibly. It's hard to imagine the Steelers moving on from Mike Tomlin unless it does like start at Tomlin and Tomlin's like, I'm looking for a new place.
He's like, I need
kind
a
of
break.
looking for a change of pace. And I think having a losing season would accelerate that. It comes back to like, I just don't know what they're building in Pittsburgh. It's the second oldest team in the NFL by snap adjusted age. And you look at, some of the picks that they've made, Broderick Jones hasn't worked out at left tackle. They aren't building something in the receiving core. I love Darnell Washington as much as the next guy, but it's still like they don't have pieces that you're excited by offensively or defensively. And also, we always joke about when a receiver leaves Pittsburgh, it all goes downhill from there. George Pickens looks like a superstar in Dallas. And you move on, you lose George Pickens for a third-round pick. This offense is one of the worst in the league by most metrics. Aaron Rodgers has kind of propped it up in a very gimmicky way, a lot of yards after the catch, low average depth of target, etc. And now the defense isn't playing well. It's just hard to think you go into next year, right? Let's say Tomlin does stay. You can't look a Steelers fan in the face and say it's going to be different. I don't know what unless they get a miracle at quarterback and make a big trade or a big splash play, which they've not done since Roethlisberger has left. I don't see how this Steelers team is any better next year. It's an old team, a lot of older guys under contract, and still no long-term answer at quarterback, no long-term answers really at receiver. The offensive line is still not where it needs to be. I just feel like they're due for a changeup. I don't know if it's Tomlin necessarily, but it feels like you're gonna finish the season as a Steelers fan being like, man, nothing changes. Nothing really does change.
The Pickens thing is the first time I thought, has Tomlin lost his fastball? Because every time we've talked about this before, he gets rid of the guy, and then the guy's like an even bigger disaster somewhere else. Antonio Brown, of course, being the greatest example, but there's been other guys too. And the fact that Pickens went on and now looks like better than he ever did in Pittsburgh, I'm like, that is kind of weird. I didn't expect it to go that way. So we'll see. All right, so Mike Tomlin's streak on the line. It's almost, not to be mean Steelers fans, it's kind of the only interesting thing with the Steelers the rest of the way. Because even if by some miracle they sneak into the playoffs, no one's taking them seriously. They're not going anywhere. They're plus 250 to make the playoffs. They're probably not even going to get in. And so that's kind of the only interesting thing about them the rest of the way. They're just kind of mired in mediocrity, which is what you're saying here. So we'll see what happens with the streak for Mike Tomlin.
It has to be said, though, just real quick, like the mediocrity of it all. It's better than being, the Jets or the Giants or the Raiders or the Browns. And I think we have to recognize that. I do think, though, so many consecutive seasons where it feels like there's this hard ceiling on the team. And yes, a hard floor, but also a hard ceiling on the team with no oh man, this young receiver or this young offensive line, okay, we're building something. There's something that's stacking up here. I feel like they've had stopgap Band-Aid solutions at every key position since Roethlisberger has left. And that to me is why I just don't know, you need to change something, right? And I think Tomlin has tried with coordinators and these different things, but it just hasn't worked out. Maybe there doesn't end up needing being a change down the road.
Yeah, they're not a train wreck franchise. They're not a bad franchise. They're just mediocre with no real chance to win big. So there you go. All right, who's number 2 on your list, Austin?
I don't know if he's actually number 2, but I've been meaning to have a conversation about him for a while now. CJ Stroud. Okay. And now I've been in the depths of Texans Reddit trying to understand if there's actually some diehard fans who think Davis Mills is better than CJ Stroud. Thank God the Reddit is right and that no one's really considering that Davis Mills is better. However, Davis Mills obviously won these last 3 games. CJ Stroud was underwhelming to start the season. He was underwhelming last year, got an offensive coordinator and Bobby Slowick fired. Now going into this stretch here, and let's look at the schedule again. Remember, it's most at stake over these next 6 weeks. They have a real shot at making the playoffs if they go 4-2 over this stretch. They have at Colts, at Chiefs, 2 hard games coming up, then Cardinals, Raiders, at Chargers, and then Colts again at home. If they split the games with the Colts and then lose to the Chiefs, but beat the Cardinals, beat the Raiders, and beat the Chargers, there's a better than 75% chance that they make the playoffs, according to the New York Times playoff predictor. So they need to go pretty much 4-2 down that stretch and specifically split those games at least with the Colts. If CJ Stroud, who since week 1 of last season, mind you, is 22nd in EPA per dropback, 24th in net yards per attempt, and 25th in success rate. Quarterbacks in that same tier are Aaron Rodgers, Spencer Rattler, Bryce Young, Russell Wilson. He has been, by every valuable metric, bad over the last 2 seasons now. And obviously, you have the injuries this year. I think he's been playing better before he got hurt. And I think when he comes back, the offensive line looks better. Nico Collins looks better. There's a chance he comes back and things start to look better. But if they don't, and Davis Mills wins these 3 games, CJ Stroud comes back, they go 3-3 or 2-4 down the stretch, they miss the playoffs again. It's going to get harder and harder to remember that rookie season where he won Rookie of the Year and he won that playoff game and everyone's really excited about him. Maybe he's a top 8, top 6 quarterback in the league and you're coming down this contract. Are you going to give CJ Stroud $55 million a year? David Mulligetta, his agent, he's going to be aggressive trying to get money. Are you going to feel confident as a Texans fan giving CJ Stroud $55 million a year after now what would be back-to-back seasons of underwhelming play and maybe even another offensive coordinator, right? We don't even know if Texans are going to go with Nick Caley, the new OC this year, again, after kind of what has happened this year. I just feel like CJ Stroud coming back from injury after where Davis Mills was, how good this Texans defense is, maybe the best in the NFL, you can't come down the stretch here with, I think, not an easy schedule, but definitely a winnable schedule to get into the playoffs. I think if he misses the playoffs, I think there are going to be some real concerns around CJ Stroud in the offseason.
At first, I was wondering, why do you have CJ Stroud on this list? I was kind of like, well, what does he actually have at stake? It's not that big of a deal, but the money thing is really, the contract thing is huge because, like you said, he's eligible for that extension this offseason. And Trevor Lawrence and Jordan Love are making $55 million per year. Though, I wouldn't put those 2 in the same tier. I'm just giving you 2 guys in that range, but that's the neighborhood we're shopping in if we're talking about CJ Stroud. Now, the Texans don't have to do anything. He's under contract next year. Then they got the 5th-year option. Then they have the franchise tag. So if they want to slow play it, they can slow play it, or they can commit to him and say, no, you're our guy. And so, let's just nip this Davis Mills comparison in the bud here, because I think we got a natural experiment. Stroud versus Mills, similar supporting casts. I know guys were injured at various times, but Stroud just this season, you gave the numbers the last 2 seasons. No one's denying last year was bad. I think it did kind of go under the radar that he was improving a little bit this year, and the offense was showing strides. He's 16th in EPA per pass play, 18th in success rate this season. So you're saying, all right, mediocre, competent play. Davis Mills is 30th and 33rd. So we can at least, no, this isn't like a great experiment, but you could tell, all right, he is maybe turning this from one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL to a mediocre passing game, which is something. It's not what you want if you're a big CJ Stroud fan, and I think he's got a higher ceiling, but you can at least say that. So the Texans have not won 3 in a row because of Davis Mills. They have won 3 in a row. He had the great comeback against the Jaguars, but it's been, like you mentioned, their defense looks incredible right now. And you know what? You were laying out the scenario earlier. I think they're getting in. And I've been, they've sucked me in before, and I've gotten burned by this Texans team. I joke that with the Ringer 107, I'd be in first place if I just didn't take the Texans all year long. But I lose on the Texans pretty much every week. But you know what? I'm going back in because I think you just need mediocre offensive play with that defense is going to be enough to get back in the playoff picture. I even look at the division, Austin. They're plus 750 to win the division. And I'm like, that seems like it's not going to shock me if they beat the Colts twice. It's not the most likely outcome, but it's certainly possible with that defense. So maybe I'll get burned again. I'm with you. I think if he plays well down the stretch, now we're talking about, all right, now the offseason, you're giving him that money and you're feeling really good about this team. So there is kind of the high variance with what could happen here over the next 6 weeks with Stroud.
That's exactly how I'm seeing it. I think there's a huge range of outcomes for CJ Stroud and how Texans fans, I think specifically, are feeling about CJ Stroud, depending on how these next 6 games go, right? If he, at Colts, at Chiefs, he loses back-to-back games, doesn't look good. And then every game down the stretch is a playoff game. They probably miss it and they don't go into the playoffs. I think a lot of Texans fan at the bar is going to be like, I miss Davis Mills. He won 3 games for us. I miss Davis Mills. Now, like,
that sounds like a video content idea, by the way. I would watch that.
Real heads are going to be like, no, CJ Stroud still has it. Wasn't a good year. Offensive line, we got to figure it out. We had the Iowa State receiving core for some of the season. Nico Collins has missed time. It all will line up. The defense looks good. We have something to build off of. However, if it looks bad down the stretch and the offense looks inept as it had maybe in the early parts of the season, and you're going into another offseason where CJ Stroud didn't win a playoff game and look bad down the stretch, I do think it's going to be hard to even consider extending him this offseason. I think anytime I think about, maybe playing it out as you go, like, you do the 1 more year and then the 5th year option, then maybe franchise tag. It's kind of like playing it out as the Cowboys did with Dak Prescott in a way. I think that I'm leaning much more toward, after these 2 seasons, and if it ends as poorly as it could this season, of waiting another offseason to see if Stroud, again, I just want to see Stroud look like a top 10 quarterback in the league again. I felt that way his rookie year. I felt like, oh my God, he's making the leap right away. I feel really good about him being maybe even a top 8, top 6 quarterback in the league. He's going to be competing with these guys at the top of the AFC. Since then, it's hard to feel that way. And I think until then, when you're, because obviously when you're going to the quarterback contract negotiation, everyone's starting at this like $50 million number now. I think you can't pay a quarterback that number unless you honestly feel he can be that top 10, top 8 quarterback in the league that can like win you road playoff games in January and February. I'm not feeling that way about CJ Stroud right now. And I think these next 6 weeks will kind of be a big part of what that discussion ends up being in the offseason.
I'm with you. If he doesn't, unless he goes on a tear here, I would be inclined to slow play it a little bit, which is easy for me to say. There are relationship dynamics and agent relationships and all those things, but I would just be like, let's not get into a sorry, Dolphins fans, situation where all of a sudden we're looking back in 2 years going, why did we rush that? Or Daniel Jones, we could have just waited a little bit here. So there you go. All right. So Texans fan at the bar, Austin, video idea. You're at the bar, red Davis Mills jersey. You're crushing Michelob Ultras. Maybe you're ripping a couple cigarettes and you're telling us that the Texans could actually get to the Super Bowl with Davis Mills. I'm just telling you, I'd watch it. We got.
I'm just saying there
NFL.
Are a handful of Texans fans at bars. If they lose these games, they're going to be like, dude, I miss Davis Mills. I think he can sling it. I think he can sling it. I want Mills in. And I think CJ Stroud is like standard deviations better than Davis Mills. But this league is what have you done for me lately? Yeah. And if CJ Stroud down the stretch here, coming back from injury after Davis Mills wins 3 games and they miss the playoffs and he doesn't play well, that's what's going to drive the conversation in the offseason.
I hear you. All right, let's take a break. We come back. One more. Who does he have next on his list for the most at stake the rest of the regular season? This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Having insurance isn't the same as having State Farm. It's like needing the protection of an offensive guard on the football field, but getting an elementary school crossing guard. Sure, they're both guards, but you can only trust one to keep your quarterback safe when the game is on the line. So don't settle for just any insurance when there's State Farm. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. All right, we are back on the Ringer NFL show. All right, Austin, who's the last guy on your list? Who do you got?
I saved him for last because I don't even know if I fully believe it, but I kind of want to believe it. And it's Daniel Jones. And it's kind of the Indianapolis Colts overall, right? Obviously, big favorite to make the playoffs. They're 8-3 right now. I wanted to go over who they've beat this year and the games that they've won, and then also look at their last 6. So they're 8 wins this year. Week 1, blew out a bad Dolphins team. Miami fired their GM this season. It's been a disaster. They barely beat the Broncos and Bo Nix off that leverage call. That was like a 29-28 game. They win that game. They blew out the Titans, one of the worst teams in the league. Blow out the Raiders, maybe the worst team in the league. Beat Jacoby Brissett and the Cardinals, barely. JT had a huge game. Beat the Chargers with that banged up offensive line. They don't look the same without Joe Alt. They blew out the Titans again. They get the gift of playing the Titans twice. And then against the Falcons in Germany, almost ended up losing that game, but JT has like an absurd game. Jonathan Taylor has an absurd game, 3 touchdowns, over 200 yards rushing, whatever. Those are their 8 wins against a lot of bad football teams, a lot of injury-plagued football teams, and also in situations where I think Jonathan Taylor has been the best. To finish the season now, after losing to the Chiefs in a game that I think they could have won, but Daniel Jones, I think, specifically played poorly down the stretch, they have Texans, at Jaguars, at Seahawks, Niners, Jaguars again, and Texans again. They have 4 divisional games left on their schedule. Texans twice, Jags twice. And then you got to go to Seattle, and you got home against the San Francisco 49ers, who are never an easy out. This is going to be a tough schedule down the stretch. And I think you haven't beat a lot of good teams this year. You've played teams that are banged up. And when the game matters most towards the end here, and specifically in this, I want to talk through some of the Chiefs plays after I kind of hear what you think about this, but I do feel like when you heat up Daniel Jones, or when the situation heats up Daniel Jones, it gets harder and harder to see like, okay, this Colts team is a Super Bowl contender. This Colts team is a deep playoff contender. And like everyone's been kind of counting them as a pretender since they started off so hot. But I think this Chiefs game specifically last week, and seeing how Daniel Jones played in the fourth quarter and overtime, really reminded me of like, oh, wow, if it's a 1-score game late, and you're getting into third down with Daniel Jones, you're going to have a real shot to beat this team. Whereas like when obviously they're up in big leads and Jonathan Taylor's running over everyone with a really good offensive line, it's easy to see them as this juggernaut that's blowing out teams. But I just don't know if I trust this Colts team in 1-score games, and they might have to play 3 to get to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I mean, they've got the 4th hardest schedule according to the betting markets. They've got, just for Daniel Jones specifically, they've got the 2nd hardest remaining schedule of opposing defenses by DVOA. So they're going to have to earn it. And I'm not penciling them in to win the AFC South. You know, I'm with you. You look at the end of that game, and I rewatched it before we came on, and those last 4 drives, they don't pick up a single first down. They couldn't run the ball. And so now you're getting them in a situation where Spags is saying, you're not finishing this game by running the football on us. And so first drive, they try to run it. They can't. Then he gets a pass deflected. Second drive, Steichen comes out and says like, all right, we can't run it on him. Let's go play action. They try a screen. And then third down, Spags gets to him, heats him up, speeds him up. That's an incompletion. Third drive, they go 3 straight passes, and one of them he throws into, as the announcers say, you know, the defensive back meeting room, where it's like that ball is intercepted 7, 8, 9 out of 10 times, and they just drop it because they run into each other. And then the fourth one, you know, they try a couple runs there in overtime. They try an RPO, and they get stuffed in short yardage. So 4 straight possessions without a first down, and you zoom out a little bit, and Daniel Jones ranks 30th out of 36 quarterbacks in turnover-worthy play percentage. He leads the NFL with 8 fumbles with Cam Ward. This is just why I've said, and it goes back to the Sauce Gardner trade, I'm like, can I see a little bit more before I say the Colts have figured it out and they have this great plan and they're going to be a contender. And Austin, the other thing I was thinking about was there are a lot of teams in the AFC this year that are like, we're on the way up. And this is the start of something, you know, Colts, Broncos, Patriots. This is a unique year where Lamar Jackson and the Ravens don't look great. Josh Allen and the Bills don't look great. Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs don't look great. Joe Burrow got injured. Like if I'm a fan of one of these teams, I'm like, this isn't just we should really try to capitalize this year, because the next 5 years might look totally different, because sometimes you feel like you're on the way up. You're not on the way up. That was your shot. And you look back 3 years later and it's over. So that's kind of where I'm at with this Colts team.
Development's not always linear. Success is definitely not linear. This year-over-year stacking that, I think a lot of Broncos fans or Colts fans, or I think Patriots fans probably have the best best case to
I
be
agree
thinking,
with
oh
that,
man,
yeah.
because Drake May looks like this monster, and but we've said that about quarterbacks before. I think with Jones specifically, and you kind of brought up kind of the specific plays I was going to hit, but there was that play where he throws it to two Chiefs defenders at the same time. That was a clean pocket on 1st and 10, right? And I think those are the situations where that's what I say, it's not just heating him up with pressure, it's heating him up with situation, being this is your time. We need you to make a play. And I felt like his accuracy was off, not reacting to pressure well. And, on these key third downs, you put the Colts in 3rd and 6 plus, 3rd and 8 plus. I think they have a lot of skill players that can solve problems for them, and they have a really good offensive line. But against the best defensive coordinators in the league, the best defense in the league, it's going to be very difficult for, I think, Daniel Jones to step up, especially if he's on the road, outside, playing in against teams that I feel like in the playoffs you're going to be playing against. And it would be such a sad way for the Colts to end this season where they look sloppy down the stretch against a very good strength of schedule. You got Texans twice, Jags twice, Seattle, Niners, and then you go into the playoffs. You don't have the first round bye like you maybe could have had with such a good record to start the season. You're on the road potentially in the wild card game or something along those lines. And it's all of a sudden, wait, this Colts team finishes without a playoff win? I mean, how likely is that? I don't know what the odds are on FanDuel, but to bet right now the Colts finish the season without a playoff win, it feels like there is a real shot for that, despite at times this year thinking they might be the best team in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, they're still the favorite. They're actually the favorites to get to the Super Bowl in the AFC at plus 480, which kind of speaks to what I was talking about. You're looking around and you're going, I don't really feel great about any of these teams. But yeah, they still are the favorites. Now, there's a bunch of teams bunched up there at the top, but the Colts have the shortest odds in the AFC. And of course, Daniel Jones, we didn't even talk about the contract stuff. He's another guy who he's they could either pay him at the end of the year, they could tag him, or they could do something else. So he's got a lot riding here at the end of the season as well. All right. That was great. Austin Gayle with me. Who has the most at stake the rest of the regular season? Austin, thank you for joining me, my friend.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. I'll be right back with the Hurry Up. The Hurry Up is our closing segment where I give you a take on news in the NFL. And after week 12, news broke that the Raiders have fired offensive coordinator Chip Kelly. Listen, it was a bad situation. No one's going to argue otherwise. Offensive line has probably been the worst in the NFL. Pete Carroll's got 2 of his sons on his staff. But having said that, this is a little bit of that's what the money's for, Chip Kelly. Can you figure out some type of scheme as a way to coach around these shortcomings with Geno Smith and Ashton Genty and Brock Bowers? Now, I know Brock Bowers was injured, and the fact is Chip Kelly showed no ability to do so, and that's despite reports from the MMQB that he was the highest paid offensive coordinator in the NFL at $6 million per year. Yet this was one of the worst offenses in the NFL by just about any metric. I'm not telling you a great offensive coordinator could have turned this into a good offense, but it could have turned it into at least a little bit better than what they were showing week to week. So this idea that Kelly's second act in the NFL was going to be a hit after he honed his scheme and play calling in college, let's be honest, it just fell flat. Nothing worked. Everyone looked miserable. And we have to be honest about the fact that the last time Chip Kelly coached an NFL offense that looked competent was 11 years ago. So I don't know. I suspect this is probably the last time we ever see Chip Kelly in the NFL. Now, when we zoom out, with Pete Carroll, it's just hard to see a scenario where he lasts past this year, unless Mark Davis just doesn't want to pay another coach, which is possible. But man, that whole situation has just been depressing. It's been a disaster. It's been a mess, whatever term you want to use. All right, we'll spend more time in a future episode talking about what the Raiders do next. But the Kelly firing, it just seems like the first step in yet another reset. All right. Thanks to Austin Gayle. Thanks to Christopher Sutton for producing. Kiera Givens on social and additional production supervision by Conor Nevins and Arjuna Ramgopowell. I'm Sheil Kapadia. Talk to you tomorrow on the Ringer NFL Show. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas, in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino. Or 18 plus and present in D.C., Kentucky, or Wyoming. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit rg-help.com. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York.